Kucharski. I work with the Recovery Advocacy Project. I'm a person in recovery since September 6th, 2003, and I live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I moved here 2 years ago, and I'm still working to get to know the South Carolina recovery family. So it's good to see you all here. We're doing this series about vote recovery, and we had a town hall meeting in June in Pennsylvania. And one of the questions that came from the town hall meeting was, how close are we to having recovery? We still have a good amount of people coming in. People still coming in. So let me start with the basics of Recovery Advocacy Project. We're really working to give grassroots community organizing skills to people in recovery, family members, supporters of recovery, and really asking people to think and act locally. And the Vote Recovery campaign is similar in that respect. I know that the presidential election sucks up like a lot of oxygen in terms of the election. But we want to get people to think about, the change that you can make in your communities on a local level with the issues that you care about as a person in recovery or as a supporter of recovery. And we had a town hall meeting in June in Pennsylvania, and somebody in the town hall had asked, how close are we to having recovery be a single voter issue? And a single voter issue, if you're unaware, that would be like the environment, that motivates people to get out and vote, or reproductive rights, or guns, right? Like those are all issues that motivate people, no matter where people are on that side of the issue, motivates them to get engaged in their community or get engaged in voting. And so the conversation that came from that question was really interesting, and we decided to work to duplicate, that conversation across the country from then until election day. And pretty much beyond. And then we did some polling on it as well. And we actually polled 1,200 likely voters and asked them if a candidate of an opposite political party that you normally identify with had a more attractive stance on mental health or recovery issues, would you consider voting for them? And these were all likely voters, and 42% of the people that took that survey said yes, and another 28% said they would consider it, and then 20-something% said no. And so that does tell you that recovery is an issue that inspires people no matter what the political party is. And so this event tonight is not about Democrat or Republican or a specific candidate. It's really about what makes a recovery voter. What are the issues that inspire us as people in recovery and supporters of recovery to get to the polls. Now, the last piece of this before we get started is we asked that same question, the question of would you consider voting for another party if the candidate had a better stance on recovery or mental health. And we asked that same question to over 1,000 people in recovery. And so you would imagine that the number went way up. It was like it was more than 80%, almost 90% of people that said yes. And so it is something that motivates people. But in the same questionnaire and survey we did, 50% of the people that answered that survey said, but I don't know where my candidates stand on the issues. And so on one hand, we say, yeah, we would think about voting for somebody if they had a good stance on recovery. But on the other hand, we're like, we haven't done the research. And so part of Vote Recovery is for each individual one of us to think about what are the issues that inspire us to get to the polls. And the recovery issue is very broad, like it could be criminal justice reform issues that inspire us, harm reduction, access to health services, racial equality, ending the drug war, ending mass incarceration. It is a lot of issues that can inspire us, and all have to do with recovery in one way or another. And so the voices that you're going to hear from tonight are voters in recovery, and and then we want you to stay for the end, because we're going to walk you through a brand new website. It's a recovery voter hub that basically allows you to dive deeper into the issues. It allows you to check your registration status. You can still register to vote online through the website up until October 4th, I believe, in South Carolina. And there's a lot on that website, and Garrett, who works with the Recovery Advocacy Project, is going to help with that at towards the end. And so the last thing I want to say before we get started right to the recovery voters is I want to thank our South Carolina organizing team, who for the past they've met every single week for weeks, and they're working hard to listen to people in recovery. And they created a South Carolina platform that I'm actually going to put in the chat box. And so if you want to endorse the platform as an individual and say, hey, I support what you all are working on, you can take that action tonight. And our South Carolina organizing team, I wanted to thank Michael Crouch, Mike Todd, Nicole Chris, Cindy Coates, and our regional guide and mentor, Claudia Hamilton. And so I wanted to thank them for their leadership. And we're having this event tonight because of their drive. And so I wanted to make sure we thank them. And so we're going to hear from 4 recovery voters. Our first voter, our first recovery speaker is Tina Harris. She's director of Greenville County Community Outreach. And so we're asking each speaker to share about 6 to 8 minutes. And so Tina, I'm gonna stop talking and give you the floor. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation. And it's a real honor to be here. I want to talk to you today about from a perspective from the street. And I feel like because I'm in community outreach, I can be an advocate for the people in recovery or caught up in substance use disorder and needing help. I want to advocate for them tonight because on several days in the week, I'm out on the street. The organization that I work with, Favor Greenville, we have an approach that says, we will meet you where you're at. And that takes me to the street. So on a given day, I'm out passing out Narcan, helping another organization pass out food. Meeting people where they're at means that I go to the food banks, the soup kitchen. On the street, I go to encampments. And up close and personal, I can see the disparity of what's taking place. So one of the things that I see is that people are picking up needles off the ground. People are using needles over, even though there are some organizations that go out and do a harm reduction kit, put it together, which it may contain needles, it may contain the works, clean works, bleach for cleaning needles, and a naloxone muscular injection. Well, I'm out passing out Narcan nasal mist. But however they get it, it's much needed. It's something that's much needed on a large scale and at a much easier rate of getting. So being out, I see from week to week, oh, thank you. I learned how to use the nasal mist because I had to save Billy Bob's life last week, and then there goes Billy Bob walking by. So what drives me to get out and vote and get involved is the fact that at some point in the near future, recovery people will be invited to the table to make decisions about things that affect people in recovery or people that are getting in recovery. Women that find themselves pregnant and on drugs, they deserve a seat at the table to make decisions about funding or projects that can become available for women that find themselves pregnant and on drugs. That's not something that's out of the ordinary. I've been in that seat. A seat at the table would say that we want to use evidence-based harm reduction practices to save people's lives. The things that get me involved and get my juices flowing are community-based things that people, they don't get out and see. I mean, it's very easy to make decisions behind four walls and in a conference room, but if you never get out to see what is going on out there in recovery, if you came into a place where your seat at the table got you there because you got into recovery in 1988, well, let's talk about the face of recovery. I'm a person in long-term recovery since 2006. And since 2006, the face of addiction has evolved, and it continues to evolve, which means to me that we have to evolve with it to make things better. So that in South Carolina, in comparison to, let's just talk about the Southern region. In comparison to other states in the Southern region, we're falling behind in a life-saving outreach for people that are still out there using the same needles, like I said. I think that for me, it's about saving a life, and then we can work on getting you into recovery. But lives matter. It's not just about, when I think about being marginalized and underserved, right now, it doesn't have anything to do with my economic status, my socioeconomic status, my color, my race, my religion, all of that. Because addiction doesn't know any boundaries. So when we talk about a seat at the table, it's about lives mattering in recovery. And if we can get some people at the table that can make some recovery-worthy decisions, get some things on the ballot for funding, for harm reduction, for the women that I talked about that are pregnant, find themselves pregnant with nowhere to go. That's what drives me. That's what gets me out to vote. And, when I think about, we got a lot of people in recovery, as the numbers were talked about earlier, but I guarantee you that if you look at the number of people that are registered to vote and voting, it would be a sad commentary. The fact that people that are on probation or pardon and parole, I get out every year to voters registration. And what I find is that people are misinformed about their situation. When I think that because I'm on probation or I've been in prison, convicted of a felon, and I got the mentality that I will never get to vote, that saddens me. It saddens me. So what I think that we need is people to get involved, get out at recovery meetings or what have you, but to get people in recovery involved so that we can stand up and we can have a voice. Because for me, if I don't vote, I don't have a voice. I'm talking loud and saying nothing. So from a community standpoint, I want to get to the table. I want to advocate for those that are in need and don't have the wherewithal right now to make that decision to help somebody. So I can't speak for you, but as for me and my house, we vote. We vote not only because we're Afro-Americans, but because we're in recovery, and the marginalization that goes along with both of those demographics saddens me. So I stand up and vote, and I stand up for recovery with my head held high, and I don't care who knows it. Thank you for having me be a part of this.
Oh man, I almost feel bad for all the rest of the speakers. Honestly, Tina, thank you so much. That I'm literally was hanging on every single word, and I couldn't agree more. And you spoke to. Um, I love that you spoke about that people that are actively using right now are part of this community, and we don't talk about that as much, right? Like we have recovery sessions and stuff like that. That piece of this is so important, and talking about what harm reduction really means, that conversation with people that are making decisions for our community is so important. And there's this saying that a lot of us in the recovery community use from that. It's borrowed from the disabilities rights movement, but the piece about nothing about us without us, and that piece about being at the table and work, and that is, if you look at the platform that I put in the chat box, it really outlines a lot of what you just said in terms of seat at the table, voices for harm reduction, and I'm blanking on the third one, but those are two real big pieces to what Recovery Advocacy Project is working on in South Carolina. And so thank you for speaking. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Richard Jones. He's the CEO of Favor Greenville. So we're going to give Richard some time to talk about what's important to him as a recovery voter.
Thank you, Aaron. My name is Rich Jones. I'm the CEO of Favor Greenville. I'm a person in long-term recovery, 20 years. I agree a lot with what Tina was saying, and I think that, I can kind of go down a list of issues from a voting perspective, what I would support, what I wouldn't support. It would probably be very, very similar to a lot of the things that that all of you would talk about, syringe availability, clean needles, more harm reduction services, decriminalization, those type of things, insurance parity. There's nothing on the list that I don't agree with in terms of an agenda, a political agenda. And things are so screwed up that you literally have a dozen different major league issues that you could go after, ranging from treatment access to let's stop locking people up that use drugs, or let's talk more about true harm reduction practices and the funding of true harm reduction practices. All of that, I think it would be very hard for you to find anything that I wouldn't, agree with. Aaron was talking at the beginning, and he was talking about this dual challenge of would you vote for somebody if recovery was the issue? Or this dual perspective, voting for somebody, you know, as a one issue voter, recovery, but then not knowing where people stand. And I can also relate to that, because I would be very disingenuous if I sat here and I told you I knew where my, you know, representatives stood on these issues, especially some of the more nuanced issues and things like that. It doesn't, I guess where I would start from a get out the vote kind of perspective would just be to have a real honest conversation. It just doesn't get talked about at all. It is not even on the list of important issues. For the record, I love animals and I love dogs, and I'm glad that there's animal rights, but there was an animal rights rally that attracted double the number of people that the average recovery rally attracts. And so we have, what we have is we have a problem. We have a twofold problem. It is, can we get the vote out? And then do we know where anyone even stands on what candidate supports us? What's interesting to me is I would like to see it even be part of the conversation, or finding a way to get people on the record where they stand, because to me, it's actually getting to the character of the person, not so much where they stand on any one particular issue, because there are so many issues and there's going to need to be such deep, deep change that what we really need to do is we need to challenge our elected officials. Do you think this is a healthcare issue, or do you think this is a moral failing? And I think what happens is a lot of people get up in front of crowds, a lot of politicians get up in front of crowds, and they say it's a disease because they know that's the right thing to say. Or they know the talking points, but their actions don't back it up. And there's really nothing about the way that they carry themselves that would make you think that they actually think that this is a disease. And so, you know, how do we even actually figure out where people stand on those issues? And so when you say things like we need to be at the table, I would say, what table do we need to be at? Do we need to be on another committee? At the height of the opioid epidemic, well, the opioid epidemic is still at its height, but at the height of the hype of the opioid epidemic, you know, when it was really cool to do news specials and stuff like that, I was on like 6 or 7 different committees. I was definitely at the table. I just wasn't at the right table. I was never in a room where I was allowed to actually question, you know, our state representatives on how they felt. There was an issue this past summer where there were some things said by one of the candidates who was a sheriff, and Mike Todd really did a lot of good work around this, just trying to get them to give us an answer on where they stood with naloxone distribution. Can you even put it in the debate? Is it allowed to be part of the debate? And if you really get real, it's not, how do I want to make sure I say this in the right way? I'm not even sure that the organizations and the infrastructure, and so like the state commission, the state mental health commission, I'm not even sure where a lot of folks in those organizations stand on things like harm reduction, medication assisted treatment. I've heard people who work for like the Drug and Alcohol Commission and work for official state agencies make really sideways remarks about people who are on medication assisted treatment, for example. I feel like we have a fundamental issue of there's an elephant in the room, and all we really do is talk about these like very superficial kind of like talking points, and we don't actually get down to the nitty gritty. That in South Carolina, this is not thought of as a disease. This is a moral failing. That's why there are so many faith-based programs, and I have nothing against a faith-based program, but that's why there are so many programs where you have to actually like you have to be of a certain faith and follow a certain faith to be able to be part of the program, and that's legit. and that's licensed and that's okay. And that it never, and I guess here's where it really blows my mind, that it never even gets talked about. No one ever says anything. That we have less than 48 publicly funded detox beds in the state of South Carolina. That we have, Blue Cross Blue Shield, it covers about 80% of the lives in South Carolina. It systematically denies inpatient reimbursement for substance use disorder treatment. And then you dig down deeper and you get into some of the other ideas around, what about funding other types of new approaches? Where do legislators fall in those areas? And I don't even think they understand the difference between treatment and recovery. So it's almost like you have to pick like one or two issues that you think you can actually get to. And it would probably be things like, so if I had to say, like, where do we start? Like, what are the big issues where we could have some hope? It would be more like universal access to naloxone, universal access also to intermuscular naloxone. It is silly that you cannot, and I've heard different things now all of a sudden about this, but it's silly that they had this like idea that you couldn't distribute intermuscular naloxone. And then probably after that, you get into some of the other baseline harm reduction issues. Making sure that medication-assisted treatment is available and affordable. And then you dig into, how do you pay for it? We need to become a Medicaid expansion state would be an issue. That would be a recovery type vote. Voting for Medicaid expansion, how do I want to say this? Like, if you're a recovery voter, you kind of have to vote for Medicaid expansion. You really can't, you can't really be a recovery voter and not vote for Medicaid expansion. There are just certain kind of non-negotiables. But where I have had some experiences, and I will tell you, I'm admittedly jaded. And I have to rally myself to make sure I do more advocacy and stuff, because I was used up in Washington. I was paraded out as the token drug addict who had to come out and tell his story, and nothing ever changed. We were told like the funding would be looked at, nothing ever changed. And so I got real jaded. So admittedly, I'm not as informed as I need to be. So we have a responsibility of educating ourselves on this. We have a responsibility of finding out our local officials and where they stand. I can tell you personally, and I'll close with this. I've absolutely had experiences in South Carolina at the state legislature where I felt talked down to, where I felt like I was promised a half an hour of time and I got 2 minutes. And my response to that was, screw you, I'm just going to go build something. I'm going to go raise private money and we're going to build a recovery center. And I have no faith in our legislator. I feel like we have to have a way to confront the way that we are treated as fundamental human beings, and that it is just lip service to sit up there and say, yeah, addiction's a disease. And then, it's like the behavioral tech who works in the treatment center, right? It's the recovery coach whose job is, all he gets to do is drive the van to the meetings, and his opinion means nothing at all. Don't get fooled by the idea of being at the table. Nothing about us without us means you actually listen to what we have to say. You don't just have us sitting at the table. So, and voting and getting the vote out and helping each other learn how to get register as recovery advocates, that is a fundamental part of our job. And I can tell you, my organization, Favor Greenville, we have fallen very short in this area. And we will commit ourselves to doing better as we move forward. Thank you for the time, Aaron.
Thank you so much, Rich. You said a lot that is inspired me. Thank you to both our first two speakers. It's like that piece about the lip service that you were just talking about. It's like when I talk to elected officials that they're like, hey, we passed this resolution to recognize overdose awareness day, or we pass this resolution to like recognize September as recovery month. I'm like, well, where's the action on that? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of times they're doing things just to get it, like just enough to get us to back down, and like we can't be a part of that anymore. And so one of the things that voter education piece and the candidate piece that you were talking about is really inspiring to me, because like, you know, I get the door hangers on my, I get the mailings and the door hangers from political candidates, and I'll let you know right now, the first thing that I've done, I have them all in a pile. I don't automatically throw them away. The first thing I do is I see if they have anything on them around addiction issues, like anything at all. And if there's not, I find the website, I go to the website, I look to see if there's a platform there on the website. If there's not, I contact the candidate's office and I start talking to them about it. And I'm having 3 different conversations with different candidates right now about their platform on their website around, like, some of it's just focused on opioids. And it's like, well, what about other aspects of it? It's so much bigger than that. And so we can use these opportunities as an educational piece for us personally and for them, because there's a lot that they don't know. Elected officials and candidates are generalists, you know, like they generally know a little bit about this, they generally know a little bit about that, but it's like, it's up to us to really fill in some of those blanks. And the last thing I'll say before we introduce the next speaker, I mentioned I put the platform into the chat box. Cindy, who's one of our organizing leads, is working to. We have the platform where candidates can endorse the platform as well. So it's not just people in recovery that are endorsing it. So Cindy's working on that, working to get the platform endorsed by candidates, and we will share that information with people. If people endorsed it, great. If they didn't endorse it, we're going to let you know about that too. And so I think next year, you know, in future elections, we can have a longer process of having candidates fill out questionnaires and stuff. But for now, we're just asking them to endorse that platform of Voices for Harm Reduction, seat at the table, and addressing stigma and access to care. So with that, thank you so much, Rich. Thank you, Tina. Our third speaker is Margie Stevens. She's a clinical assistant and professor at the University of South Carolina. Margie, just about 6 or 7 minutes would be great. We're going to give you the floor and unmute you here.
Hi, everybody. Hello, Erin. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here tonight and to be able to speak to you all. I'm kind of the odd bird out. I actually work for the University of South Carolina School of Medicine in Greenville. You know, and tonight I'd like to talk to you about something that's deadly. And no, this time I'm not talking about the coronavirus. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about stigma. To me, stigma is the biggest killer we'll ever encounter. More than likely, many of you know someone or you yourself have gone to the hospital or a medical provider for a medical condition perhaps related to a substance use disorder. And that person the person that went to the hospital probably received suboptimal care. Not because the healthcare provider was incapable of the care, but because the provider had a very stigmatizing attitude toward the patient, and that care may have come across as the disapproving looks or dismissing the patient's complaints, which could lead to further problems. You know, and it's time for this type of treatment to stop. So as I said, I work for the University of South Carolina School of Medicine in Greenville, and the work that I do is research into education that medical students are getting related to addiction and recovery. Did you know that the typical medical student gets approximately 12 hours of addiction type education throughout their 4 years of medical school? And when I say 4 12 hours during those 4 years. I don't mean 12 straight hours. I mean a sprinkling of 5 minutes here, 15 minutes there, and whatnot. So what I've discovered is why do we have healthcare providers that are stigmatizing people with a substance use disorder so and treating them so poorly, and they're not receiving the compassionate care? So when I looked into the medical school and I realized their curriculum, and then as I was looking at where the medical education focused on addiction and the lack of recovery, I realized that the students never encounter a person who has life experiences in recovery. And what I have discovered is that's where we're lacking. Now, a co-conspirator or a colleague of mine, Dr. Demosthenes, Dr. D is what she's called and referred to by her students. A few years back, she set out to make sure that all students got the opportunity to experience meeting people who are in recovery and learning about their life experiences from their journey through addiction all the way through the recovery. So today when I was meeting with a student and she was telling me that she learned a little bit about addiction. She said it was weird. She said it was in my brain class. So of course it was. The opioid system consists of 3G protein coupled receptors, mu, delta, and kappa. And you know, the opioid receptors are key modulators triggering the brain reward system, blah, 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 blah. You know, the students will memorize that because they'll need to pass a test that will allow them to go on to start seeing patients. But that doesn't put them in a place where they can actually recognize when a person has a substance use disorder and they need help and the kind of help. So one thing we've started doing is the first year students will encounter and experience people in recovery every single year. So the first year medical students have started by attending favorite Greenville recovery meetings, just 1 hour. That's all the student has to do for that year. And these are some of the comments that I received from them. One student said, I was shocked looking at the demographic people attending the recovery meetings. They looked normal. And of course, then you have to explain to them, normal's just a setting on a dryer. But I also realized, you know, they also said things like, I realized my own biases. I can't believe how incredibly hard people are working in recovery for their sobriety. So, you know, they may have started out with really kind of rough verbiage, but through 1 hour, they realize that people who are in recovery are working extremely hard for that sobriety. They also realize that recovery is a process and that they can be an important part of that process as physicians. Rich Jones also spends quite a bit of time with our medical students. He trains them on becoming recovery coaches. So they get to hear those stories and they become recovery coaches. Many of them do. They get to hear stories from people like Tina and Mark Burrows, who runs Carolina Wellness and Recovery. Our students end up out there as a part of their rotation. These are things that students never received. They never heard these stories, and these stories are making such an impact on them because it's no longer them learning from a book, a textbook. It's them learning from people with lived experiences. That's something I can't teach any of them. And that's something a textbook or any other of the professors can't teach. You know, as students get into like their third year and they start making their rotations, they're starting to recognize people who are having some type of struggle with a substance use before their supervising physician does. And, you know, sometimes we'll hear things like, I remember Tina saying, I wish a doctor had asked me X. And these students are asking that. So we are developing a great group of compassionate, caring healthcare providers who we need to do the same thing with the ones that are already out there. I think everybody will agree with that. because there's so many people that have never received any education on this, and they've never been exposed by the people that should be sitting at the table that are talking about recovery. You can't teach a student recovery, you can't teach them about addiction without them hearing it from the person who's experienced that. I can say all I want, but at the end of the day, I don't have the experience and the life changing bumpy road as these people that are in recovery. So the more we incorporate the people that are in recovery to all of the tables, including education, the better off we all are. And you know, what I've learned is the best way to squash stigma is to connect people with lived experiences and educate them. Now, as I say, I'm really impressed by how our students are coming along now, as opposed to the people that are out there practicing that didn't have these opportunities. But we need to squash stigma at more than just the educational healthcare level. We need to squash stigma with our legal system. The same conversations need to happen with our legal system. So they need to, may have to trick them, who knows, but they need those opportunities to hear those stories. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure the same thing we're doing with these medical students can do in the legal system with judges and attorneys and things like that. Also, continuing that into our community at large. When we get people educated, instead of just looking at people in recovery as a junkie, an addict, and seeing them as somebody who is managing a medical problem, then we'll have people, we can all get on the same page and start developing laws that help us support our brothers and sisters that are in recovery. And we can't jail our way out of recovery. So if we can change some of these laws so that people get the help they need and we get a community that'll support everybody, then we will have a much more compassionate world, honestly. But for me, I personally would like to see my tax dollars go to helping families and not hurt them. And jailing people definitely does not help anybody. So I say that we need to all get out there and vote, and we need to activate everybody in recovery community to vote as well. It's our duty. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Margie. I saw a lot of people doing the claps and the thumbs up while you're talking, and you know, I'm glad that you talked about stigma, that negative perception, right? And a couple people sent me direct messages echoing that as you were talking, and I wanted to share that other people are with you on that. And then you know, I think about that stigma piece, and then when you think about how that leads to like the actual barrier to care or access to services, or you know, when that stigma becomes a challenge for somebody to get affordable housing or jobs or funding to go back to school, like that's straight up discrimination. And so when that stigma turns into like actual barriers that are keeping people from getting services, that's the piece about discrimination. And I hope that we can think about that, you know, as we're moving forward. So thank you so much, Margie. And we have one more speaker, and then I'm gonna ask that everybody stick around and Garrett is gonna walk us through the recovery voter hub for voters. And so if you're not registered to vote, you can register. If you want to know where your polling location is, if you want to dive deeper in some of the issues that recovery voters have talked about tonight, there's a section for that. If you want to know who's running, the candidates that are running locally, there's a spot where you can go find that. And so stick around. Our last speaker is Shanita Sanders. She is bachelor in, I put bachelor in psych, which could be psychology or psychiatry. I'll let her talk about that. And then a master's in counseling, family counseling. And so I wanted to turn the floor over to Shanita and clarify your title because I totally butchered that. Thank you.
Hi, Erin. Hi, everybody. I'm Shanita, and so I work as a clinical counselor in the upstate. And one of the things that I am really, really excited to share with you all this evening is, as Margie was sharing with everyone about the external barriers that there are to stigma reduction, I want to kind of bring all these wonderful, rich, diverse conversations together with the internal barriers that clients that they may struggle with. And what I mean by that is I'm a huge, fierce advocate for compassionate engagement. I strongly believe that compassionate language and words matter so much. They are a key, essential component to how anyone that is working in the substance use field views and expresses attitudes towards substance use, persons struggling with substance use disorders, families, and their their portion in how substance use affects so many lives on so many levels. So I won't get long-winded because, like I said, I'm a huge advocate for this and I could go on for a long time. But more than anything, I just want you guys to know that I work really hard to make sure that when I'm engaged with a client, that I teach them how to see their own humanity. That aside from the labels, the diagnoses, the rumors that they may have heard, or even just the years or decades of negative, hurtful, just horrible language that they have encountered because of substance use, I want to make sure I take the necessary time to help chip away at that. Because more than anything, I want people to know that they are not the substance that they use. They are humans first, and they deserve everything that every human is entitled to. And that's love, that's care, that's respect, and most and foremost, it's compassion. So I want to make sure that, excuse me, that the language that is used in sessions, the language that is used around them in the treatment centers, that they know that more than anything, there is a place where they can go and they can be seen as a human first, and whatever condition they're dealing with, that can be addressed as well. So for me, as a counselor working with people, working with families, one of the things that I've encountered that I didn't necessarily believe that I would have to encounter is the stigma that's amongst substance use professionals. And so from all levels, so I'm not going to pick on any one discipline, but I've just been kind of taken aback. And so I love being, Margie used the word co-conspirator, and making sure that my allyship includes being comfortable enough that when I'm sitting in those meetings, I make sure I say, that didn't sound right, or that wasn't very compassionate language. Did you mean to say that, or can we say that a different way? Because it's crazy how when you use a word, like, for example, pothead, that a certain stigma comes with that term in and of itself. But nobody says tobacco head when you're talking about cigarette and cigarette use. And so it's just like when you say I smoke cigarettes, there aren't as many negative connotations that comes with that. So I want to make sure that I use my time, my influence, and especially my voice and my space in rooms, my space in the community, and my space in wherever I am, that I let people know that we are dealing and we are talking to and we are trying to provide care for humans first. And everything else comes behind that. So I hope that more than anything, that you'll take away a little bit of all the wonderful things that the previous speakers have said. But for me, I hope you'll hear the humanity and the compassion in which I hope to bring to this discussion, and what I hope to continue to bring to the community. And when we vote, not only in these elections that are coming up, but from here on out, that we vote for humanity, that we vote for each other. And we remember that we need to make sure that not only our best interests are accounted for, but we also take the time to make sure that our brothers and sisters, and especially those that are in the substance use fight, that we make sure that their voices are amplified, especially if we don't have those particular set of issues. I love you all, and I thank you for your time, and I'm excited to be here with you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nita. That your voice is much appreciated. I love how you touched on just humanizing it. I think a lot of us, it's like we hear statistics and like it's about people. Like addiction and recovery impacts every single family in this country in one way or another. And I live in Myrtle Beach, so I play golf. All right. So, and whenever somebody I always get paired with like strangers, and whenever somebody asks me what I do and I start talking about addiction recovery, and working with nonprofits that support addiction recovery, I know by the end of that round, this is like 100%. Somebody in the golf cart that I'm talking to, they're like, hey, I have a son, or I have a family member, or I have some, and like it takes them a little while to like come up with it, but like I talk about I talk about recovery and I say what I do, and they're like, huh, or they're like, oh, like I listened for the response, but every single time, by the end of the round, like they ask about advice on something, and because for somebody that's impacted by addiction. And Christine had written something in the chat while Shanita was speaking, and that she said South Carolina people don't talk about it; they shy away from talking about it, and there's an embarrassment and worried what others say. And I think that the more people in recovery that really share like when we share our own personal experiences, when we hear that stigma, or when we hear somebody say something that's offensive, or they use the word junkie, or no good, useless, whatever, there's that window of opportunity to educate people and change some perspective and give another piece to it. And so I hope that we can all think about the voice that we have as people in recovery or supporters of recovery, and have those one-on-one conversations, and have the larger conversations when we're talking about having a recovery seat at the table. So I'm gonna hand things off to Garrett Haid, who is he's an organizer with me for Recovery Advocacy Project, and I want to thank all 4 of our speakers. Just amazing. And I'm sure Garrett has a response to hearing from the amazing speakers too. But I just wanted to thank the 4 of you for really touching on, personally, I've touched on a lot of issues that I care about. And so thank you all. And I'm going to turn it over to Garrett, and we're going to talk about how we're going to walk you through how to get involved. So, and last thing, we do language trainings from time to time, and this speaks to both what Margie and Shanita were talking about. If you want to learn how to talk about recovery without like having it sound weird, or having it, because a lot of times we unintentionally might talk about our own recovery, and it doesn't come out the way we wanted it to, and it actually can add to stigma sometimes. And so we do language trainings from time to time. Be on the lookout for that in the future from Recovery Advocacy Project. It seems like that's something that's needed. And so I want to pass things over to Garrett Haid, and we're both gonna kind of walk you through the Vote Recovery Hub and what's next. Garrett.
Sure. Thank you. And just echoing, thank you to all the speakers, but also thank you to everyone who attended tonight and is like willing to engage in this conversation. It's so incredibly important. My name is Garrett Haid, and like Aaron said, I work with him at the Recovery Advocacy Project. I'm also a person in long-term recovery since March 3rd, 2015. And I agreed with pretty much everything that was said tonight. Like, you all were amazing. The one specific thing I wanted to touch on, because like when having that seat at the table, right, and being there, and I've been so, like with Rich was saying, how frustrated I've been to get like the little pat on the head, like, thank you for sharing your story, we'll take it from here, you know, and been invited to those discussions, but not being actually heard. And Aaron kind of alluded to it, where candidates can sign that pledge, right? In Nevada, we did that, you know, 2 years ago, and that's where we started, right? You know, 2 years later, we've now formed interviewing committees where we have Republicans, Democrats, independents, undecideds, people in recovery who are actually taking to the candidates questionnaires and having them answer these questions and getting it on record, recording the conversations. And you know, like it will get there, and this is kind of just how political organizing goes around these issues. But like we now have, you know, 37 candidates in my local area who have not only signed pledges, but gone on record about what they're planning to do. And we plan to say, okay, like you did that, you said that, now let's hold their feet to the fire when you're in office. So it starts with this type of conversation though, right? It starts with us coming together as one, because, you know, it was said, like, there's a list. I mean, issue after issue after issue after issue after issue. But if we can come together and be like, where do we start? Okay, we all agree with this. Let's start here. Now let's go find out who's with us and who's against us. And then we can really see some change. The other part, you know, I'm going to show you this tool. I'm going to share my screen in a second. But 4 years ago, I lived in a different state. I was in California, and I never had voted before, was not engaged politically. All I knew is that my friends were dying once a month. I would lose a friend once a month for, you know, it happened for about a year or two. And I had another friend who was like, I don't know what to do, but we should start talking about this. Let's just go register people to vote. And I was like, I don't know how that's going to help, but let's do it. We went around from sober living home and recovery house and recovery, and we registered over 100 people, about medium age 24, who had never registered to vote before, taking that information to our local congresswoman. But I just to make a long story short, we, in the next 2 years, passed multiple laws. Multiple candidates started asking if they can come hold discussions for the residents, fundraisers at the recovery homes for their upcoming campaigns. So like the importance of registering to vote is also to show like we are a powerful constituency, right? Me and my friends had to go to the election board and get paper ballots and go door to door. So like the point of this also, this vote recovery hub, which I'm going to share with you, it makes it a lot easier now, right? We can do this online. So we've created this site. Can you share? You can see my screen, right, Aaron? Yes, we're shaking heads. Cool. All right.
Yeah, yes.
So recoveryvoicesvote.com/vote. And this kind of like what everyone was talking about, where to register, where to polling place, like everything you want to know, candidate information, it's all here. We've kind of put it like a one-stop shop for our community. I encourage you to share this with anybody who might be interested. So if you scroll down here, we kind of just did this in this first step, 4-step process, right? And you can go up to the top, there's quick links. But step one, Aaron talked about it in the beginning, like organized issue voting. Like how close are we to be having this as a recovery being a single issue voter? If you want to go a little deeper dive into what we have found based on the surveys that we have, I'm going to do this. This happens a lot. I'm going to stop my video and it should go a little quicker now. The surveys that we did, the ones that Aaron was referring to, one was nationally through our recovery community. One was local in Nevada. And the 1,200 one, like Aaron said, not people in recovery, off a voter file, registered voters in Clark County, Nevada. 55% of them would cross parties if the candidate was favorable on addiction or mental health issues. Like that is a huge asset for our community to know that, right? Like if we can step outside of our own kind of circular, echo chamber and talk to the general public, like they want to vote with us. They want to put people in office that reflect the issues that we care about. It's just kind of how do we navigate that, right? Stigma, we talked about that tonight. 79% of the people we polled believe that stigma is a huge barrier to people even trying to access care. So again, just kind of reaffirms the work that we need to do. You can dive deeper into this. I don't want to take too much time on it because Aaron talked about also right here. You can also take the survey. You can share that with if we can get some more data. Always great to have. This is the one that goes back to Aaron's point. 1,100 people, a little over 1,100 people have taken it so far, and it goes back to him saying like we all want to see change happen, and we're Aaron had said what is almost unsure, up to unsure. So very small part of people they're not sure if they would support a political candidate of our people, right? But if you look at the numbers here, very small amounts of people actually know where their candidates stand. Rich said that I'm guilty of that too, right? So it's like we all have work to do. Like we can, sorry. But anyway, I encourage you to dive into this. Like we put all sorts of, beliefs and values, barriers to care, judicial authority and sentencing. Margie was talking about that around judicial. The other thing, like I had a friend overdose. He survived 2 days ago, luckily, right? A very close friend of mine overdosed. The paramedics had naloxone where I live right now. So if he was a few towns over, police officers do not carry naloxone, right? So if depending on who responded to his call, he may or may not be alive, right? That's how important local leadership is, and that's how important it is that we know where our local candidates or sheriffs or health departments. It goes all the way down the list, right? So dive into this, fill out the survey yourself. I'd like to find out where you stand on some issues. Step 2, right? Like we said, there's a whole list and it can go on and on. We put a few things here, but what is a recovery voter? What issues do you care about? And that's what we're trying to encourage people to. It's like, what do I, Garrett Haid, care about? What drives me to the polls, and how does that relate to recovery? If you're planning on talking to elected officials and you're going to ask them questions, like this is a great place. You can come right here, recovery issues education. Like maybe I'm preparing to go address somebody running for state senate and I want to know where they stand on homelessness, or I want to know where they stand on insurance discrimination or record expungement or ending the drug war or veterans affair. I can come here, brush up on some knowledge on those issues so I'm well prepared to deal with it. But I can also learn more and learn if does affordable housing, will that deliver me to the polls? Will that engage me to get there? So we built this here. We take suggestions. If you see things that aren't on this list and you think something should be added, obviously a lot of issues tie into the recovery voter. But we put up a few. We'll continue to build off of this. Any one of these you click on will take you to a either a partner site or just a knowledge base through a related organization that can help you dive into these issues. And step 3, right? We were talking about this, learn about your candidates and elected officials. I have to tell you, 4 years ago, when I started voting, and somebody said you're going to register to vote, I mean, that was the starting point, right? But I didn't know what the difference between a U.S. senator or a state senator, or I didn't know what the difference between a lieutenant governor and a governor did. I knew that those two positions existed, but what's the difference? What does my city council do? What are my sheriffs responsible for? What are my judges responsible for? So once we identify the issues that we care about, who are the people that are affecting those changes in my local community? Who are my elected officials that I should be asking the questions of? Because a certain issue, when it's coming to maybe I'm somebody who's advocating on I need more recovery housing in my city, that might not be something that my governor is going to be taking on, but maybe my city council can, you know, access something to that, or the mayor of the city. Who should I be addressing, and what do those people do? Again, 4 years ago, I did not know any of these things, right? So and based on the conversations I've had all across the country, I'm not alone in this. We need to properly, you know, tool our community to take on these. It's like, don't just register to vote. We want to empower you. We want to educate you. So here are some tools to do that. The last step, right? Vote. Last step is vote, right? Get registered. It starts there, and it doesn't end there. And to become that powerful constituency, you know, we need to be a voting constituency. Elected officials listen to two things: money and votes. So if we don't have the money right now, we certainly have the numbers. If we can just organize and get people registered, we could legitimately become the largest voting constituency in the country. But you know, we got to start somewhere. So you can come here, like Aaron had said in the beginning, our voter tools. You can click here and register to vote online if that's an option for you. Check your voter registration status, absentee and early voting, find your polling place, registration deadlines. And the last thing I'll put in
the chat too.
Aaron put it in the chat. We ask everybody on the call if you wouldn't mind to take the pledge. It's not only will you vote, but you will get somebody who isn't registered to vote and help them register to vote as well. So, because we can't do this alone, bringing somebody along with us is always good to bring a friend. So we put that there. Share that if you wouldn't mind. Fill it out. Please take the survey if you feel comfortable doing so. And the last thing that's not part of the step 4, but it's been a very helpful tool based on feedback we've gotten. Voter restoration, violations, and voter suppression. So if come voting day, if anybody has experienced any sort of voter suppression tactics, their ballot's not getting casted, the polling place is being shut down. Like, there are resources here that, again, it'll go to a partner organization or a knowledge hub from another organization who tackles these issues specifically. So if anybody is feeling discriminated or voter suppression or anything like that, there's some tools and resources for them to access right from our site. I think that, unless Aaron tells me to click on something else, that's like a quick.
No, that's great. And if you're ever turned away at the polls, that reporting voter violations, it has for Spanish speaking, it has for different, it has different avenues to do that. And so that's an important one. And then the last sort of thing that I would add, you know, is get this out, you know, recoveryvoices.com/vote. And then you heard from some great recovery voters tonight. If you also, and I'm going to ask our recovery voters to do this as well, but if you want to share why, you know, the issues that you care about, that inspire you to get to the polls, and you want to say, hey, I'm a recovery voter, these are the issues that I care about, and not talk about political party or candidates or anything, but make it about you and the issues that you care about. We made this, I
put in the chat,
this website where you can actually make a 60-second video, and people are submitting it all over the country. And so it's voterecoveryvideo.com. That'll bring you to, we'll be able to collect all these great videos, and we'll probably do some get out the vote work from all these people that submitted these amazing videos across the country. And so if you want to add your voice and your name and your visual to that, then we want to be able to give you an opportunity to do that. And so we're pretty good on time, but we figured we'll stay on if people have any sort of questions about voting, and we'll try to answer as best as we can. Does anybody have any questions? We can take off mute. Yeah, you can. If you raise your hand on the on Zoom, we'll be able to take off a mute and answer your question for you. I think we covered a lot, honestly.
Hey, Aaron. Hey, guys. I got a jet, man. Thank you for having me tonight. It was a pleasure to be able to share my story, guys. But I got to run now a little
Thank you,
early.
Rich.
All right.
Thank you, Rich.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you so
guys.
much.
Let me know if I can
Appreciate
help
you.
with anything.
All right, I appreciate that. And so, if there's no questions, then if everybody, on your own time, just go to recoveryvoices.com/vote, or recoveryvoicesvote.com actually goes to the same place as well. And so, and there's plenty of actions and stuff you can get involved in there. And so, I'm psyched about what's coming next for South Carolina. And so we're going to keep working with the organizing team, and coming up with actions for you all. And if you have ideas, if you have some local stuff going on and you want like a petition made for you, or if you want to start a letter writing campaign to elected officials, get in contact with us. We just made a South Carolina Facebook recovery advocacy project, so you can find us on there, or reach out to any of the organizers I mentioned before, Michael, Mike, Cindy, and Nicole, or Claudia. And so, thank you all. I'm new to South Carolina, but totally psyched. And I appreciate all of your time and your voices. And thank you for joining us tonight. And we'll see you at the Pulse. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.